Good afternoon. Welcome to this first regular council meeting of the municipality of Jasper for 2025. Happy New Year to all in the forum room and to those watching on our live feed and those who will be watching later on our YouTube channel. Welcome to council and administrative staff in the room, and welcome to those in the gallery who have joined us today. Councillors, you have today's proposed agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or other changes to be made to the agenda? Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I had a in-camera agenda item under land and legal.
Thank you for that. Any other matters to add to the agenda? That? Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for that. Any other matters to add to the agenda? So we have one suggestion for an in-camera item under land and legal. That could be added as agenda item 9.2. We'll change upcoming events to 9.1. If there is nothing else, I will call the question on the proposed addition to the agenda of item 9.2. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And may I have a motion then to approve the agenda for today's meeting as amended? Councillor Waxer, thank you for that. That is carried. We have an agenda. And before we begin that agenda, I will take a moment to thank Councillor MP for her duty over the last 2 months as deputy mayor on our behalf, including a trip at her expense to Coney to represent the community for our long-standing relationship now in excess of 52 years. With our sister city in Japan, being Coney, also a national park. At the same time, I will welcome, I believe it's Councillor Paul, I'm sorry, Councillor Waxer. I should know by where you sat. who joins us now as deputy mayor for the next 2 months. We have one set of minutes for us for approval today. That is the minutes of the regular meeting of December 17th, 2024. Are there any errors, omissions, or corrections required to be made to those minutes? Councillor Melman.
Thank you, Your Worship. And last month we had a very busy festive season. And I noticed in the minutes that it was recorded you had attended the Chamber Christmas party. When in fact you're at the fire brigade party, still making sure that you're at an event, but just enjoying the company of everyone during the Christmas period.
Thank you for picking up that small detail, Councillor Melnick. You are absolutely right. And perhaps that small change can be made to the minutes, and if there are no other changes required, might I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of December 17th, 2024 as adjusted. Councillor MP, thank you for that. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. That takes us to agenda item 4, delegations. We have no delegations scheduled. We have some residents in the gallery. I think there has been an inquiry whether any of them wish to present to council on any matter on the agenda. I have heard not, and I see a shaking of heads. So we will say that agenda item 4 has been considered and We can move on to agenda item 5, correspondence. We have no correspondence on the agenda. Mr. Gibbon, is there anything else that you're aware of?
None, your worship.
I will state for the record that there has been one piece of correspondence, an email received addressed to all of council. It's not clear to me whether the senator wished that to be part of a public agenda. So I will acknowledge that it has been received, but we won't perhaps deal with it until I get a response from the senator that they wish it to be part of a public agenda or otherwise. Which takes us to agenda item 6, new business. And the first matter we have is agenda item 6.1, supplementary assessment of improvements and supplementary tax bylaws. And I will turn that to Director of Finance, Director Melanchuk. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, your worship and council. Thank you. So today administration brings forward to council the supplementary assessment of improvements bylaw as well as the supplementary tax bylaw. So this is pretty customary. Council has seen this in the past, usually brought last year it was brought to council in January, February last year. Just a little bit earlier this year, trying to get ahead of things. So we are looking for first and second reading on the bylaws. It is as per section 313 of the Municipal Government Act, requires that the council pass the bylaw before May 1st in the same year that the supplementary is to be done. And also in section 314(3) states that the supplementary assessment must reflect the value of an improvement that has not been previously assessed, or the increase of value of an improvement since it was last assessed. And 369 states that if in any year a council passes a bylaw authorizing the supplementary assessment to be prepared in respect to the property, the council must in the same year pass a bylaw authorizing to impose supplementary tax in respect to that property. So as you can see, there's a bit of a financial detail on the past 5 years of what we've seen for the supplementary levy. And this is just the municipal side of things, not including the Alberta school tax or the Evergreen, which is separated. You can see that there were some increases in 2023. The report that was given when I came in 2024, there was actually some more adjustments that occurred. So that number actually went up from 16,000 and some change to 24,000 and some change. And in 2024, it was just under $8,000. Obviously, going forward, the impacts of the fire, we would see definitely changes in this annually for some time. So it's quite an impact now over the years to have this imposed so that we can accurately ensure that we're assessing and taxing those improvements coming along. So attached to this request for decision are the 2 new bylaws that have been written up for reading today and potentially first and second. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Are there questions of administration from council? In the absence of others, I have one, which is, this is a standard process. Obviously, we have a supplemental assessment bylaw and then a supplemental tax bylaw every year. In these peculiar circumstances, how might the assessment and the supplemental tax bylaw apply to interim housing?
Your worship, that's a novel question. Thank you. So I'm gonna say that first administration would need to take that back and consider. A leading thought that I have would be that it would depend on who the owners of those units were. If the owners of the units were private entity, then, and they were being rented out, then they would be subject to normal property tax. If the owners of the units were, for example, the provincial government has a system under which they have previously paid property taxes. Over the last number of years, the provincial government has explicitly only paid 50% of the property tax that's due on provincial facilities within the municipality. Council will know that this comes to a head every year when the administration recommends that council has to write off 50% of the property tax bill for the provincial building. So if the interim housing was owned by the province of Alberta, it might be subject to the same system. My understanding was that the initial proposal for interim housing was that it would be owned by the Alberta Social Housing Corporation. Because we don't currently have any of that type of facility in our community, I'm not aware of whether those units pay municipal property tax in other jurisdictions. That's something that's knowable and that we could find out. But again, the provincial government, the principle at play here is that a lower order of government cannot tax an upper order of government. So the municipality doesn't have the authority to sort of levy a tax on a provincial or federal government. A longstanding practice of both orders of government has been to pay local property taxes in recognition of the fact that the municipality provides a significant amount of services to the property, such as street cleaning and sidewalk maintenance and all those other sort of municipal services. As I said, the province a couple of terms ago decided that they were only going to they're going to short pay their bill by 50%. The federal government, under the payment in lieu of taxes program, has consistently paid essentially an equivalent amount. So they make a payment in lieu of property taxes that is exactly equivalent to the amount of property taxes that would have been charged on a property. So I guess, again, my leading answer to your question would be it depends on who owns the units. If it was a private owner, I would imagine they would be subject to property taxes. If it was the provincial government as an owner, I would imagine that they might take a similar approach and only pay half of the property tax bill. If it was the Alberta Social Housing Corporation, I'm not sure, we can check on that. And if it was the federal government, I would imagine that they may fall under the federal government's payment in lieu of taxes program, which sees the federal government consistently pay 100% of the local property tax bill. We can certainly take that issue away and ask the question, get a little bit more detail. Administration would be happy to follow up to council by email on that. Would that be appropriate?
It would, and I thank you for that, and it does not impact today's decision, but I was curious, and I take it though that through that answer, although you cannot respond definitively with respect to taxation, the assessment would apply, we would assume, to the interim housing, and again, I'm quite prepared to have a considered opinion come later, but it is not just the taxation, it is the assessment itself that is of interest. It seems like an improvement on land, so.
Your worship, I would need to talk to our assessor. The improvements would depend on the nature of the improvements, whether it may depend on the nature of the improvements, whether they're sort of viewed to be temporary in nature or viewed to be permanent in nature. That would have an impact. That's something that we can take away unless Director Melanchuk has any sort of further response on that. Seeing maybe not. I see at least the same level of uncertainty that I have, and so your worship, we'll take that away. We can discuss with our assessor about sort of how we would value those types of properties.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Are there any other questions of council for administration? If not, is there council prepared to make a motion for first reading of bylaw 264? That's in your last.
Not yet. That council read for the first time bylaw number 264, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to authorize the supplementary assessment of improvements for the taxation year 2025.
Thank you for that motion. Deputy Mayor Waxer, is there any debate? Call the question, all those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And is there, and a councillor prepared to make a motion for second reading? Councillor Melvin.
Thank you, Your Worship, that make the motion that council read for the second time bylaw 264, being the bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to authorize a supplementary assessment of improvements for the taxation year 2025.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Melvin. Again, I will look forward to debate. I see no hands. I'll call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. So that bylaw read for a first and second time. Is there any need for any discussion with respect to bylaw 265, which is the supplementary taxation bylaw? And if not, I would look for the councillor to make a motion for first reading of that bylaw. Deputy Mayor Waxer, thank you.
That council read for the first time bylaw number 265, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to authorize the imposition of a supplementary tax for the taxation year 2025.
Thank you for that motion. Deputy Mayor Waxer. I see no hands indicating debate. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Again, I would look for a motion for second reading of bylaw number 265. Councillor Wilson.
I would make a motion that council read for the second time bylaw number 265, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to authorize the imposition of a supplementary tax for the taxation year of 2025.
Thank you for that motion. Councillor Wilson, again, absence of hands indicating debate. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you to administration for getting that matter to us promptly in the new year. I understand that, well, no, we have lots of time for that. It's the next one. Has some time sensitivity, so that takes us to agenda item 6.2, which is the utility fees levy and collection bylaw for 2025. And again, turn to you, Director Malinchuk.
Thank you. So yes, we're bringing now the bylaw for utility fees levy and collection for the 2025 year. We just finished going through the 2025 and board budget, and this would be then to support collecting the amounts that we put forward in the budget. So basically, of the amounts that we need to collect for 2025, which is 7.5 million, 6.3 million would be collected through the levies that you see on the Schedule 1 of the bylaw itself. There were some increases that occurred within the budget. Solid waste was the only one that decreased slightly. And that was because of the cell development that came offline from the prior year. So we were no longer contributing to that cell development. So we saw that decreasing 3.64%. Recycling saw an overall increase of 4.08%, and that was due to increases in transfers to reserves and in anticipation of the new extended producer responsibility adaptation. The water levies will see an increase of 13% overall, and this was for reserves, additional expenses anticipated from the bulk water building and sandy dump being brought online fully for the first full year. And then the sewage increase was 5.77%. This was mainly due to that 5-year increase to reserves to get us to a proper an amount being contributed to the asset management. And there was also increase in some in contracted services as well, and dementia payments, as well as the obvious salaries and benefits that occur every year. If you look at the next page, there's just some summaries of where the changes would have occurred from one year to the next. Overall, you'll see that we're still talking tiers. For tier one would be the average residential is what would consume up to the 20 cubic meters. Then you see tier two would be the small commercial. Tier three normally falls for medium commercial, and tier four usually falls into large commercial. So it's all based on the consumption, and as you use more, you're ultimately paying more. And then the next chart, you can see that in residential as well as commercial, you see that the garbage goes down slightly and recycling goes up for both areas. And then the next chart gives a summary of the sewer and water for connection as well as capital charges. So it's a lot of numbers to look at. So just before the meeting, I kind of did a quick generation of further math just to kind of summarize it. For instance, if somebody is using the 20 cubic meters of water, and they are receiving the connection and their capital payments for water, sewer, garbage, recycling, whatnot, it is an increase annually of $90.56, so $7.55 monthly. And then on the large side of commercial, if they were to use that full amount of 1,543 cubic meters, then the annual increase is $3,846.11, which works out to be $320.51 per month. So just to give an idea of where residents and on the commercial side would sit with the increases that are, and the one decrease that has come along with the 2025 budget. And attached to this is the bylaw for consideration for first and second reading. The time constraints that Mayor Ireland spoke to is about the advertising of the rates. We have to advertise the rates, and in order to do that, we place it on the November and December utility levy that goes out in February. So then any clients would see, okay, this will be my rate for next year going forward, and they would see that ultimately change in March on their next bill for January and February of 2025. And that's a quick summary of that one for council. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Melchuk. Any questions of administration from council? Councillor Melchuk.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Director Malachuk. As businesses are reopening through the next 3 to 5 months, will we prorate those charges? In other words, if they're not open and functioning, we won't be charging for garbage, and obviously there may not be any consumption of water. Or how will we handle that as businesses are recovering and getting ready for the summer?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Melnick. Basically, what occurred, given the fire, was we have put out applications through to the province on tax. I want to say recovery, but it's not the word. Stabilization, thank you, I couldn't think of it. Stabilization as well as utility stabilization. So once we have full knowledge of where we will be in that decision process, then we'll have a better idea of what will occur in the next years going forward. So I can't say exactly, but we are continually assessing what is occurring and looking at it as things change and move along. So it's a constant daily thing. We're considering everybody's unique situations. So it's quite a process to do this, but we are cognizant and trying our best to keep, well, we are doing our best to keep track of this and ensure that residents and commercial owners are receiving the best that they can, but it will depend ultimately on the decision of the province and what we receive from them.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the answer.
Other questions of administration? Councillor Keller.
Thank you, Mayor Arden, Fuses, Director on Chuck. Just to follow up on Councillor Molyneux's question. So are these individuals receiving utility bills now at a current rate and then they will be credited later, or they're not receiving the bills now?
Your worship, through to Councillor Keller, and yes, they are currently receiving bills. And yes, hopefully we will be crediting down the line. That's what we're looking for, yes.
Thank you for that.
In the absence of other hands, I will pose a question. Would there be any utility in us adding a requirement for new builds to have a sewer meter? We have this unusual, unexpected situation where roughly 30% of structures in the town have to be rebuilt. There has been long discussion about the additional transparency that people were actually metered for sewer. Would there be any benefit in considering that as a requirement for new builds and then reconfiguring the bylaw to adjust so that those with a meter for sewer pay a sewer rate and those others would still pay based on the metered water? But start the process to transition, because it seems to me if ever we're going to do it, there is no opportunity at present when there's 30% of the structures have to be rebuilt in any way.
Your worship, I'm not certain that I've seen any municipality, I'm not aware of any municipality that meters wastewater. So I don't know if there's such a thing. There may be on an industrial scale. It's something administration would have to take back. I'm not aware that it's a commonly applied approach in any Alberta municipality today. So that I would hesitate to say that there's no such thing. But I would say that I'm not aware of any municipality metering wastewater today. Administration can certainly take that back and see if there's such a thing. I appreciate the point that, you know, we're facing an opportunity to sort of reimagine the municipal infrastructure that connects to private properties in Jasper. There may be an opportunity here, but again, I'm not immediately aware that that's something that's used anywhere else in Alberta, for example.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to clarify, I think I got lost in my train of thought. With the utilities, at the moment, destroyed properties themselves are not receiving the actual billings because there is no connection, there is no usage and whatnot. So those have been removed. However, what we're doing is still accounting for those amounts that would be applied to those businesses or those properties, because we have to know the amounts that we would have been losing. So that amount's still being accounted for so that we can report that to the province. I just got lost in my thought. So that we are still doing that process, but the client themselves are receiving the bill. Just so to clarify that section, I wanted to backtracking my comment, and that's exactly how it's working right now.
Thank you for that clarification, and thank you, Mr. Gibbon, for your response to my question. Any other questions for administration? The councillor then prepared to make a motion for first reading of bylaw number 266. Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I would make the motion that council read for the first time bylaw 266, being a bylaw of specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta, to provide for the levying and collection of fees for the provision of water, sewer, solid waste and recycling services in 2025.
Thank you for that motion, Councillor Wilson. See no hands for debate, so I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And then I would look for a motion for second reading of bylaw 266. Deputy Mayor Lasser, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid, for the second time bylaw number 266, being a bylaw of the specialized municipality of Jasper in the province of Alberta to provide for the levying and collection of fees for the provision of water, sewer, solid waste, and recycling services in 2025.
Thank you for that motion, Deputy Mayor Lasser. Again, no hands indicating debate. I will call the question. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. And that will come back for third reading prior to February 6th, I think. Thank you for that. Councillor Mellon?
Thank you, Your Worship. If I may, just a quick question on the sanding dump. Is the sanding dump up and running, fully functional? Are we still working towards that project being completed?
Your worship, for Councillor Malik, no, it's not currently active. I think it's very close. I can certainly provide an update. I know that the utilities team is working on that. I can provide the latest status. It certainly looks like it's ready to go from the outside, but I believe last time I went by there were still some barricades up for it.
Thanks for the late question. And the answer.
Well, you're welcome, and it's for a similar late question for me, and that is just with respect to bulk water. So in terms of debris removal for those contractors who are required to spray water for asbestos abatement, are they able to access bulk water currently?
Your worship, certainly the municipality hasn't changed or stopped selling bulk water, so we certainly have that ability through our pre-existing system.
Thank you for that. That takes us then to agenda item 6.3, Jasper Recovery Coordination Center progress updates. And I think we look to Director Park.
All right, everyone, to get the microphone function. Mayor Ireland, members of council. So welcome to 2025. The updates from JRCC. So I think top of everyone's mind is the question of interim housing. What I can say on that front is that discussions are ongoing between municipal, provincial, and federal governments to try to determine the best way forward for interim housing. There has been some correspondence back and forth between the different levels of government, and we are waiting to hear the results of that correspondence in order to be able to have clarity on the way forward. Unfortunately, I cannot provide more details than that at this time. I will make one correction. So in the report, it speaks to Parks Canada has gone up for a request for proposal for some modular units as well, with a closing date of January 12th. Unfortunately, due to some bureaucratic challenges, they were not able to meet that timeline, so that is currently slated to close on January 21st only. So that's an update there. The residential demolition permits, 274 have been issued to date, representing 435 dwelling units. So the demolition process actually continues to move forward very well. We remain on track to have the demolition complete and ready to go for a spring reconstruction season. The joint town rebuild continues to have their drop-in sessions available until February 28th. On the social recovery side of things, we expect to have the trailer for the food bank in place before the end of this month. And we thank our partners at the Red Cross and ATCO for facilitating that. On the economic recovery side of things, we are continuing to work and liaise with the various different agencies and partners, working on the needs assessment and identifying gaps and funding opportunities. And then on the communication side of things, as we previously communicated, there will be 2 open houses again this month for the JRCC. A virtual session on the evening of Thursday the 23rd and an in-person session on Saturday the 25th, where we will again provide residents the opportunity to ask questions across all areas of recovery work. And there will be representatives from the MOJ, from Parks Canada, from the Insurance Bureau of Canada, and various other agencies, Red Cross, etc., will all be present in support of answering questions to residents. Those are the highlights for this week. I'm happy to answer any other questions. I don't think there's much more detail in the report other than what I've already covered. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that report, Director Clark. Questions from councillors? Councillor Wilson?
Regarding interim housing, I know we don't know much more regarding that, but on the report here under temporary accommodations, it suggests that there's 68 households bridging to interim housing, and that they're, I'm assuming they're identified and we know whom they are, but we still haven't seen a matrix on who will be going into interim housing and how, you know, I know there are some essentials, but I don't think we've seen that kind of, you know, who is going to, of course, we're gonna have a lot less than there are residents, and you know, has that kind of been built out a bit?
So what is understood is that the first priority will go to those people who are working in areas that provide essential services to residents. And then there are other criteria that are still being discussed and finalized with the other levels of government. And much of that will depend on the final details of how much housing is provided and by whom and where. So I wish I could provide a more fulsome response than that. So work has been done on a prioritization matrix. Unfortunately, it is not finalized and therefore not able to be made public at this time.
And as soon as we can, I think it would probably benefit the community for us to be candid to suggest that, you know, a lot of residents that may be waiting for interim housing may not qualify or get that interim housing because the amount is just not going to meet the needs.
So we have been communicating that extensively for some time, that I think everybody is aware of what the supports that may become available have been communicated, and that is not going to meet the total demand. So those who have the opportunity to secure their own interim housing options are certainly have been encouraged and have been informed that it is in their best interest to do so. We understand that there are others who may not have that ability, or who may have suboptimal arrangements that, although viable in the short term, are not necessarily viable for them in a longer term, and that they are therefore looking to this program. So we will do what we can for those people once the full details of the program become clear.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hall?
Thank you very much, Mayor Ireland, and thank you for your part, Director Clark, and welcome back, and Happy New Year to you as well. Comment and a question: with interim housing being what it is right now, I would hope or wonder if potentially the permitting in the R4 zone might be set up, because that could be a space where residents can get back into their modulars quicker than a build. That just my comment. My couple questions: in the beginning of December, in one of your reports, I did ask about the compliance fee that comes with the building permit. I'm just wondering if there's been, I appreciate it was 2 weeks off, and if there's no answer yet, that it's still front of mind for many residents who are concerned about insurance shortfalls.
So I anticipate that there will be an announcement on compliance fees in the near future. I cannot provide more detail than that at this time. In regards to the R4, there is no prioritization currently in place by area. It's essentially on a first come, first served basis. And what I can say is that the Parks and MOJ team have staffed up considerably and are able to process and work through permits fairly quickly. So if you have the ability to move forward with a rebuild in the R4 area, then I don't anticipate there would be any bureaucratic obstacle to moving forward with that.
One more question, again, around the R4 area. We all know that if you have lost your modular involuntarily, you can replace it with a new one. If someone has lost their home in R4, and they want to sell their lot, can the buyer replace it with a modular home? And again, I appreciate you might not know this answer, but I want to put that into your head because that is something that's been coming to me.
So I would have to verify that with Parks County.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Other questions for Director Park? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Waxman.
Again, a happy new year, and my question is in regards to the vulnerable population who are currently being housed in hotels and places like that. Is there a specific plan for housing, interim housing for the vulnerable, or are they in the list?
So the vulnerable people that are currently housed in the transitional housing program, the same eligibility criteria will apply as we move forward to the interim housing. So as units become available, being vulnerable and the criteria around what qualifies as being vulnerable is included within the evaluation criteria or the prioritization criteria. So they will be prioritized on that basis.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Go ahead, Councillor Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, you Jasper, happy new year. As you know, we're going to have a lot of shortage of housing. And I've had a couple of people come to me and say, well, we have motorhomes come summer when we lose where we're living now. And is it possible that like with winter parking, that Wapiti, some area like that could be configured for housing for people that, as they rebuild, that might be able to live in their motorhomes for the summer?
So once again, we are very alive to this issue, and what I can say is I anticipate that there will be an announcement on a facility for the use of recreational vehicles as housing in the summer period coming soon.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland, and on the lines of Councillor Keller-Anthony's question, and this might not be to Director Park, but I wonder if we'd be able to relax the rules around parking on the streets like we did in the fall for RVs and residents that have nowhere to live.
Your worship, that's something maybe I'll speak to, that starts trending into typical operations. Obviously, council is well aware that, managing RV traffic within the town site is a pretty complex issue and one where there's lots of pressure in a normal year. Council provided a waiver this fall. We obviously had fall's a lower season, where we don't see as much sort of rubber tire traffic with RVs coming into town. I think we have to assess that carefully. I think as Director Park said, at this stage, we're looking at all available options. That is a option that we certainly can consider. It would come with some additional complexity as we're trying to differentiate what is a local versus non-local. And there's systems that could be in place for that, but it isn't quite as easy as it was this fall to say, well, we know there's not a lot of visitors here in October in their RVs. And it's a relatively small handful that we have to monitor. So there would be additional complexity. And as Director Park said, we are currently working, alive to the issue of the need for interim housing options. Nothing is off the table, and any resident that has the ability to choose their own destiny by finding somewhere that they're fully in control of, rather than waiting on other decisions, would be probably wise to make their own decisions about somewhere where they can provide the stability that they need for their family and for their own personal circumstance.
And if I may, I would just supplement, we will be coming to council soon with further information, but you have to understand that the there's gonna be considerable demand on the use of public space, especially as we move through the rebuild component. So staging for and laydown for material to support the rebuild. And that would be compounded by, for example, any other use of public spaces that, so we wouldn't want to bring it in isolation as a single disappointed decision. We would want to have the complete picture and then be able to present the complete picture of the demand for the use for public spaces to council for consideration. And that is the intent that we will bring forward for you.
Thank you all for questions and Director Park for your responses. Are there any additional questions for Director Park? Councillor Melvin.
Thank you, Your Worship. If not directly to Director Clark, but perhaps to administration, as we will be having demands for on-street and we do have a public use bylaw as it relates to sidewalk seating. And I wonder if we should accelerate that review and discussion sooner rather than later to kind of determine who may or may not need sidewalk seating, as that might have an effect on areas in the community. We have a couple of areas in town, but I'm thinking specifically on Canaan, where we have a blank space. And could that be used either for parking, could it be used for sidewalk seating? I'm just wanting to get ahead of the game. I appreciate the conversation regarding the use of trailers and motorhomes as a potential housing. Again, not wanting to get ahead of any announcements, but I think it's a good planning to be looking at this stuff earlier rather than later.
So there's an existing use of public spaces bylaw that contemplates those types of uses, and they are very much around commercial use in support of public businesses. And so one of the things that we as the JRCC will bring forward for your consideration is separate discussion around other use of public spaces, for example, in support of the rebuild. I don't know, and I would defer to Kevin about the whether we would want to reconsider or re-examine that bylaw for those particular uses, as I don't believe that they would be in conflict. Like the patio seating on Canaan is not going to detract from the ability to do lay down in the residential areas, for example.
I would agree with that case that Director Park sort of shared, and Councillor Malnick is wrong, that, there's a bunch of issues that are sort of coming together, and council had a bit of this discussion prior to the break, when we had the discussion about the climbing wall, a great addition to Jasper, very important for that local business, explicitly a commercial enterprise that is intended to generate a profit. And so we need to start to think about how that interacts, our recovery objectives and wanting to support local business with sort of the broader use of commercial of public space. The JRCC team and our urban design and standards team are working to support displaced local businesses through the concept of a pop-up shop sort of space where there would be temporary commercial operations, probably located on public property, probably located in a parking lot. And you can see where I'm going. And so this is commercial activity located on public lands, explicitly operating in the summer, that would displace public parking. And I'm sure councilors can start to get a sense of, there's a few overlapping issues that we're going to need to take account for. So the idea of, displacing a few parking stalls in service of allowing businesses to operate, obviously that would be something we would all support. Then you start to say, okay, and those parkers could move somewhere else. What's going to be our demand for utilization of the parking lane for patios this summer? And how does that match up with the number of stalls that we're displacing because we're allowing businesses to operate in a parking lot? Administration is already, there's actually a fairly well-developed concept of a pop-up space. There's a number of businesses that have expressed interest. The administration is currently working through some of these issues. And I would suspect that we'll bring something forward to council, because in one way or another, at minimum, this pop-up sort of commercial space will exist on public property. There's very little private property where that could happen. So we'll need council to give some guidance on, you know, what might be an appropriate rate, what other things we might need to consider. And we will need to do that in a relatively quick fashion because there are businesses out there that are saying, well, I need to plan how I'm gonna run my summer season. So none of that's lost on administration. Councillor Malik, I think you said, tweet though to the, hey, wait a minute, it's not so simple because we're gonna have, you know, we all know that the summer season brings with it a high volume of traffic and congestion, which we're all very thankful for. We'll be happy to see people returning to Jasper. We need that for our economy, and it's always been something that we've had to very actively manage in the past. We're adding a whole bunch of new variables and considerations that we're gonna have to try to incorporate. And it will ultimately require likely some trade-offs. And so administration is working on those. I think you can expect to see additional decisions coming forward to council, or maybe even some guidance decision where we need to decide how to apply a bylaw or whether to ask for a waiver from a bylaw. We would bring those decisions to you.
Thank you. Other questions for Director Park with respect to this report? I had just one then, Director Farkin, the report you referenced. Maybe you said something orally that I missed. I'm just interested in the trailer for the food bank. Is that still on schedule for installation mid-January?
It is on schedule, for installation in January, correct?
Thank you for that. Councillor Miller.
Sorry, I did have another note, your worship, for Director Clark, and that was under the social recovery. I noted that work is underway in collaboration with the Conference Board of Canada and researchers at the U of C, University of Calgary, and Mount Royal to initiate a needs assessment strategy. You talk about work being on this broad-based survey. How does this integrate into the other surveys and questions that we've been asking of our residents?
So the intent is doing this with all of the partners, various organizations that have information needs across the rest of the country. And we're putting them all together to survey and looking piece of information. I wrote one request for information, so we're not constantly going back to residents and things related to fatigue and re-traumatization, and so the idea is this is going to be one survey that will provide the information that meets the needs for all of the relevant agencies and organizations. So it is being done in coordination. And where we're at currently is the questionnaire is being designed with the Conference Board of Canada, so that is almost complete. And then the work with the universities is around the methodology for collecting the information. What we want to do is ensure that we get a properly representative sample, so that it is, you know, valid and we can draw conclusions from it, as opposed to a voluntary sampling, which would not necessarily allow you to draw conclusions. So we are working with these organizations to get that representative sampling in place, and then roll out that methodology. So that's how we're doing it, and working together with all the partners, so we can get, you know, we're about, the goal is to aim for around the 6 months since the incident mark of now is the time to do the needs assessment and collect that information to meet the needs of all relevant organizations.
Thank you for the late question again, and appreciate the answer.
All right, thank you all. If we have, there's one more question, or are you prepared to make a motion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. If there's no other questions, I would make the motion that council receive the report for information.
Okay, one last look at Councillor Miller for a legal question. I didn't see one. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. Thank you for that. That takes us to, and thank you, Director Park, for your report and joining us today. We move to agenda 7, notices of motion. Is given notice of an intent to have a notice of motion. We have none on the agenda. So unless there is something oral, I will move to agenda item 8, councillors' reports. Councillors have reports. All right, I can only report, well, I will report a couple of things, without specifics. It was a busy time for interviews, over the Christmas break, and I conducted many, but it's important, I think, that Jasper continues to be in the news. We need all of Canada to recognize that the longer we get to recovery, that degree of exposure works to our benefit, so I'm happy to engage in those. And I wanted to also give a shout out to one of our residents, Meadow Dallaire, who orchestrated the lights on the fences surrounding the trailers that were burnt. And she did that in conjunction with AFRO, who sent out a crew to tap into one of the still powered light posts and put in plugs so she could find or somehow acquire an enormous number of strings of lights and fix them to the fence. And it really did add to a community atmosphere. So credit to her, with the house across the street, for thinking of others and improving the atmosphere with Christmas lights around that burnt out area of town. And that is my report. If there, go ahead, Councillor Mallon.
I'm gonna cheat, your worship. I'm gonna take this opportunity, because I didn't add it to the agenda, but I did want to acknowledge, the work of Carlson Construction Administration, the various departments, in the timely opening of the arena, the dressing rooms, the aquatic center, and how positive that was for the community, and how it's changed, I think, the mood of where we are. And I think we need to continue to celebrate that as we move forward, and continue to have additional milestones and successes. I look forward to the spring with the skateboard park being another addition to the community. But I think we need to not lose sight of the amount of work that went into getting these facilities to where they are and seeing the people enjoying the new facilities.
Thank you for that, Councillor Mallon. If there are no further council reports, we can move to agenda item 9.1, upcoming events. Of course, Jasper January begins Friday this week. Continues for 16 days. As Director Park indicated, there are virtual and in-person open houses provided by the Jasper Recovery Coordination Center on January 23rd and 25th. So we encourage residents to attend those. The Tourism Industry Association of Alberta is having its annual advocacy summit in Edmonton in February. I know that I have registered for that. I might anticipate that CAO Gibbon will attend that. He has in past years. He's nodding, you know. It does compromise councillors to some extent, because the last day is on a Tuesday, which means that we must still make sure we maintain quorum. But if there is another councillor who is interested in joining CAO Gibbon and I for that advocacy opportunity with our industry partners, that opportunity is available. So we can consider whether one more might want to join after that. We risk, as we would today, having quorum. So that is there for your interested, if others are interested. Are there any other upcoming matters to bring to the attention of council? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Ireland. With the challenges this past fall with getting our arena open because of the fire, A lot of our minor sport teams will be hosting tournaments this year, so this coming weekend, the 10th and the 11th, so the 11th and 12th. Jasper Minor Sports is hosting a Jasper Hockey Days, so there's Saturday and Sunday, there'll be games. Every single team in our league or our minor sports will host games. There's a raffle table on a Saturday to help raise funds for minor sports. Again, because we're lacking those tournaments for each team, this is a really good opportunity to come down to the brand new facility, support your local minor sport hockey teams, and potentially win some phenomenal prizes off that raffle table. I also wanted to, this isn't an upcoming event, but I just wanted to remind the public that the nomination period for the municipal election opens on January 1st. So if you're considering running for council next fall, you can put your papers in already.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hall. If there is nothing further under agenda item 9.1, then we can move to agenda item 9.2, which was added to the agenda as an in-camera matter. So I will, before I call that motion, advise the gallery and those who might be watching on our Zoom platform that I would anticipate that coming out of this, there would be no decision of council, and we would revert to open session simply for the purposes of adjournment. So for those who are watching, we thank you for your interest and your attention. I'm sure that there will be no further business conducted by council other than to formally adjourn this meeting at a later time. With that, then I would ask perhaps Councillor Wilson for a motion to move in camera at 2:32 p.m. Thank you for that motion. All those in favor? There are none opposed. That is carried. We shall now move in camera.